a dedicated and good woman, I was always loyal to my boyfriend and never disrespected him in my life. What I did was a mistake, but I hope you can understand my side of the story and don't judge me by what I've done. The sun was shining brightly as I pulled into my aunt's driveway, a sense of excitement bubbling within me. It felt like a lifetime since I'd escaped the routine of my everyday life, and I was eager for a weekend getaway. I stepped out of the car, the warm summer air wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. As I walked to the front door, I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter coming from inside. My heart skipped a beat. I knew Jake was already here. As I pushed the door open, I was greeted by the sight of my cousin lounging on the couch, a can of soda in one hand and a video game controller in the other. "Emily, you made it!" he exclaimed, his face lighting up with a playful grin. The familiar spark of mischief in his eyes put me at ease instantly. "Hey, Jake. I didn't think I'd find you in such a relaxed state," I teased, tossing my bag onto a nearby chair. "Just trying to keep my skills sharp," he replied, smirking. "You ready to get your butt kicked?" We quickly fell into a rhythm, reminiscing about our childhood antics and laughing like we were kids again. "Remember that time we tried to build a treehouse and ended up just making a giant mess?" I chuckled, picturing the disaster we had created. "Yeah, and we got in so much trouble," Jake laughed, shaking his head. "I think your aunt still has a grudge against me for that." As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, we decided to play some video games. The playful banter transformed into flirtatious teasing as Jake nudged me. "So, what's Ryan think about you spending the weekend with your charming cousin?" I felt a flush creeping up my cheeks. "He's fine with it. He knows we grew up together. Besides, it's just a weekend," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but my heart raced at the mention of Ryan's name. "Just a weekend, huh? Are you sure he wouldn't get jealous if he knew how much fun we're having?" Jake teased, his eyes dancing with mischief. "Please, Ryan knows I can handle myself," I shot back, a mix of defiance and uncertainty swirling within me. It was supposed to be innocent fun, but there was an unspoken tension in the air, a spark that I couldn't ignore. As the afternoon wore on, we cracked open a bottle of wine, the rich aroma filling the room. The alcohol flowed, and I could feel a surge of confidence washing over me. I leaned in closer to Jake, brushing against his arm, and the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, everything felt more intense, the laughter fading into a charged silence that left me breathless. "Emily," Jake said softly, his gaze locking onto mine, and for a moment, the world outside faded away. I could feel the heat rising between us, and I knew that this weekend was about to become so much more complicated than I had ever anticipated. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the backyard as Jake turned to me, a mischievous glint sparking in his eyes. "How about a game of truth or dare?" he proposed, and my heart raced at the idea of laying my secrets bare or facing a challenge that could push our boundaries even further. "Okay, I'm in," I replied, trying to sound casual, but I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. It was as if the air around us was thick with unspoken tension, and the prospect of revealing myself to him excited and terrified me at the same time. I took a deep breath and added, "But let's keep it light." Jake grinned, his charming smile sending butterflies fluttering in my stomach. Sure, I'll go first. Emily, truth or dare?" "Dare," I declared, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I was ready to step out of my comfort zone, even if it meant risking everything. "All right," he said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I dare you to kiss me." A jolt of surprise shot through me. My mind raced, battling between the thrill of the dare and the guilt that loomed over me like a storm cloud. I hesitated, looking deep into his eyes, searching for any hint of insincerity, but there was none, just playful confidence. "Jake," I began, but the moment hung heavy with expectation. I felt drawn to him, the pull between us magnetic. After what felt like an eternity, I leaned in, and our lips met in a soft, tentative brush. The world around us faded. It was just Jake and me, the heat of the moment consuming everything else. When we finally pulled away, our eyes met, wide with shock and breathless wonder. "Wow," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. I could feel guilt creeping in as memories of Ryan flooded my mind. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fished it out to see a message from him, checking in, asking if I was having fun. My heart sank. I shouldn't have done that," I stammered, panic rising in my chest. "What about Ryan?" Jake's expression shifted to one of concern. "Emily, I didn't mean to complicate things. It was just a dare, right? Just a mistake." "Yeah, just a mistake," I echoed, but there was a heaviness in my tone that belied my words. The kiss lingered like a ghost between us, an undeniable spark igniting something deeper than either of us anticipated. I wanted to brush it off, pretend it didn't matter, but the reality was that it did. "Let's watch a movie," Jake suggested, his voice cutting through the tension. "It'll help us forget, the kiss." "Yeah, okay," I replied, trying to shake off the whirlwind of emotions. As we settled into the couch, I couldn't ignore the weight of what had just happened. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether to leap or retreat. The movie began to play, but my mind was far from the screen. All I could think about was the thrilling danger of what lay ahead. The movie flickered on the screen, its glow casting shadows that danced across the room. I could feel Jake's presence beside me, the warmth radiating from his body, inching closer. My heart raced as our hands brushed against each other, igniting a spark that sent tingles up my arm. I fought with myself, torn between the undeniable attraction to my cousin and the loyalty I felt toward Ryan, who was miles away, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. "Emily," Jake whispered, his voice low and teasing. "Are you even watching the movie?" I turned my head slightly, catching his playful gaze. "Not really," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. I felt the gravity of our situation weighing heavily on my shoulders as I tried to ignore the pull toward him. "Want to make it more interesting?" he challenged, a mischievous glint in his eyes. I bit my lip, hesitating. "What did you have in mind?" "Let's just say I could use a little distraction." He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my cheek, and I could smell the faint hint of his cologne. It was intoxicating. Before I knew it, I leaned into him, our lips meeting in a kiss that was electric and filled with an urgency I hadn't anticipated. Time stood still as we lost ourselves in the moment, the outside world fading away. My mind raced with thoughts of Ryan, a distant echo in my heart, but the heat of Jake's lips on mine made all rationality slip away. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, jolting me back to reality. Panic surged through me as I pulled away from Jake, my heart pounding like a drum. "Oh no, it's Ryan," I gasped, my voice trembling. "What? Are you serious?" Jake's eyes widened, and I could see the concern etched on his face. "What do we do?" "I have to answer it," I said, my voice shaky, but deep inside, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. I was caught in a web of desire and guilt, and all I could think about was the mess I'd created. As I stood there, torn between the two men, I had to make a choice, and the weight of it pressed down on me like a heavy shroud. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart as I opened the door. Ryan stood there, his smile bright and genuine, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, Em, I missed you," he said, stepping inside with a lightness that made my stomach twist. "Hey, Ryan," I managed, my voice wavering slightly as I felt the weight of Jake's presence in the other room. "What a nice surprise." My attempt at casualness fell flat, but Ryan didn't seem to notice. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a warm embrace that momentarily grounded me. "Wow, it smells great in here. Did you guys start without me?" he joked, glancing around as if nothing was amiss. My eyes shot to the kitchen where Jake was, an unspoken tension simmering just beneath the surface. I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for Ryan to sense the shift in the atmosphere. "No, we were just about to start," I replied, forcing a smile. Jake just needed a moment in the kitchen. I felt a pang of guilt for my white lie, but I didn't know how to navigate this situation without hurting anyone. Jake emerged from the kitchen, a casual grin on his face. "Hey, man, good to see you," he said, his tone light. I studied Ryan's face for any sign of suspicion, but he simply smiled back, oblivious to the hidden meanings between us. As they chatted, I felt torn, my mind racing between the two men I cared about. Jake's laughter echoed in my ears, and I found myself stealing glances at him, recalling the heat of our kiss, the way my body responded to him so effortlessly. It was intoxicating, and yet, standing next to Ryan, I felt the weight of my betrayal. "Emily, I've been thinking," Ryan said, his voice drawing my attention back. "I have something important I want to share with you." My heart skipped a beat, the implications of his words crashing over me like a tidal wave. "I've been saving up for a while now, and I think it's the right time to ask you something." I felt my breath hitch as I met his gaze, the reality of my actions crashing down on me. A proposal? The gravity of his words sank in, and I felt my heart begin to sink as well. "Ryan, I started, but the words caught in my throat, unable to escape as I grappled with the weight of my own choices. Jake's eyes flicked to mine, a silent question passing between us. In that moment, the air became thick with unresolved tension. "What is it, Ryan?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I could feel the ground beneath me shifting, and I was terrified of the direction it might take. "Emily, are you even listening?" Ryan's voice broke through my thoughts, and I blinked, feeling heat creep into my cheeks. "Sorry, I was just..." I hesitated, searching for a reasonable excuse, thinking about how great this food is. I forced a smile, but I could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. "Right," he replied, a hint of doubt in his tone. "Well, I really think this project could be a game changer for us." He leaned forward, his enthusiasm shining through as he explained his ideas. I nodded, but my thoughts kept drifting toward Jake, who was lingering nearby, an uninvited tension pulsing in the air between us. After dinner, Ryan suggested we watch a movie together. "What do you say, Em? A classic?" he asked, his smile wide, unaware that my heart was racing for a completely different reason. "Sure, sounds good," I replied, though my mind was already racing ahead. Jake was still in the room, and I could feel the magnetism pulling me toward him. Each laugh shared with Ryan felt like a betrayal, and guilt gnawed at my insides. "I'll just grab some popcorn," I announced, needing an escape. I slipped outside under the pretense of getting fresh air, but the real reason was to find Jake. The night air was cool against my skin, and I felt a rush of adrenaline as I spotted him leaning against the porch railing, looking as conflicted as I felt. "Hey," I breathed, the distance between us closing as I stepped forward. He looked at me, a mix of desire and concern in his eyes. "Emily, we shouldn't..." he started, but I silenced him with a desperate kiss that ignited every suppressed feeling inside me. It was like touching fire. I felt alive, yet the enormity of what we were doing crashed down upon me. In that moment, I knew we were crossing an unspoken line, one that could unravel everything I held dear. But as we pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, the thrill of the unknown surged through me. I could no longer ignore the truth. My heart was divided, and the choices ahead were anything but clear. "Hey, I breathed, the distance between us closing as I stepped forward. He looked at me, a mix of desire and concern in his eyes. "Emily, we shouldn't," he started, but I silenced him with a desperate kiss that ignited every suppressed feeling inside me. It was like touching fire. I felt alive, yet the enormity of what we were doing crashed down upon me. In that moment, I knew we were crossing an unspoken line, one that could unravel everything I held dear. But as we pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, the thrill of the unknown surged through me. I could no longer ignore the truth. My heart was divided, and the choices ahead were anything but clear. The kiss lingered in the air like a charged electric current, and just as I felt the warmth of Jake's breath against my cheek, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. My heart sank as I fished it out, seeing Ryan's name flash across the screen. I quickly glanced at Jake, his face a mixture of concern and intrigue. "He knows I'm outside," I whispered, anxiety tightening my chest. "What if he comes looking for me?" Jake's expression shifted, a hint of mischief sparking in his eyes. "Maybe you should just tell him you're with me. Or we could run away. Just the two of us." His words were reckless, dancing on the edge of my wildest fantasies. "Run away? Like, seriously?" I laughed nervously, but a part of me ignited at the thought. The thrill of escape thrilled me, but the weight of my loyalty to Ryan crashed down like a tidal wave. "I can't just leave everything behind, Jake. What about Ryan?" He stepped closer, his voice a low murmur. "What do you really want, Em? You can't keep pretending you don't feel it. Whatever this is between us, it's real." I swallowed hard, the internal battle raging within me. "I know, but..." Before I could finish, my phone buzzed again, this time with an incoming call. I hesitated, my heart pounding as I answered. "Ryan? Emily!" His voice was cheerful, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I wanted to let you know I've got a surprise for you. I've been talking to Jake about it." My mind whirled. "A surprise? What do you mean?" Ryan chuckled softly, and I could almost picture his warm smile. "You'll see. Just trust me. I know you've been feeling a bit confused lately, and I want to help you figure it out." Confused? Was he aware of the tension? I shot a bewildered glance at Jake, who raised an eyebrow, equally perplexed. "Ryan, wait. How do you know about you and Jake? I had my suspicions, Em, but I'm not mad. I want you to be happy, even if that means, well, you'll see." The world around me seemed to fade away, leaving just his voice and the wild possibilities hanging in the air. I was standing at a crossroads, the weight of my choices settling heavily on my shoulders as I contemplated everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and desire. As I hung up, I felt an undeniable urge to confront the truth. Jake's presence loomed near me, a reminder of the path I hadn't yet taken. Everything felt suspended in time, my heart racing with uncertainty. I took a deep breath, staring at Jake, feeling the gravity of the moment. "What do I do now?" He smiled softly, and the tension between us crackled like electricity. "You decide, Em." Just remember, whatever choice you make, it's yours." And in that moment, I realized I was standing on the edge of everything I had ever known, ready to leap into the unknown.